We'll list the 12 ingredients in the show notes, and more importantly, we're going to list you some important links for the course so that you can learn how to do this, because there are many components, and there are quite a few downloadables. I think there's over 20 downloadables that you'll be using in this just to help you out, because we really do want this to be successful for you as you may look towards fall, or as you may look towards winter for this to happen in your church. So let me kick it off. The number one thing you need to understand, and these 12 ingredients aren't in any particular order after I give you this one, because number one really is number one, and that is you need to know the compelling question. And what this is that inside your church culture, of your community, what is the felt need and what is the question that you're answering? Because you need to have a compelling question that addresses the culture in your church. And there's many things that drive the community. You may say, hey, Steve, I don't know the compelling question. Well, you may want to start by going out and surveying your community and find out what is in front of them. Is it a lack of hope, a lack of peace, a lack of fitness, a lack of purpose, a lack of love, a lack of whatever it is? But your culture is deficient in something. There's a felt need that's not getting answered. And when you find the felt need, then you can develop the compelling question, because you want to have a campaign that is addressing a felt need that the community has. This is built for the community to bring them in. Now, generally, if you are addressing the felt need in the community, strong chance it's the same felt need that's inside your church. So number one is knowing the compelling question.
And number two is align the children's, students, and adult ministries together. And so again, we're talking about a church-wide campaign. So church-wide is the key phrase here, right? And this means, again, aligning children, students, and adults together across the board. So for example, in the course of a week, right, the adults are learning the same thing, the students are learning, and the students are learning the same thing the kids are learning. So basically, if it's the weekend gathering, the pastor may be up there speaking on this campaign topic for that week. The students and kids are also learning in their own version, because, not everything may translate exactly, but the best you can, they're learning the same principles in their ministry circles. And then so what you have is you've got the whole family learning, growing, and experiencing this life change together. And then therefore you have the whole church as well. Right, Steve?
Yep. It's a class. I love it. I would love what you just said right there, because why we call it church-wide is because everybody in the church is doing it. Number three, stick to the principles and apply your own methodologies. Now, what's going to be super important as you work through the course and as you work through all these 12 points, that you got to understand the principles of what we're talking about. And just like, Derek was sharing on this last point, is the theme may be, transformation. But how that looks in children, how that looks in students, and how that looks in adults, the theming may be the same, but the methodologies that you get that theming across are going to be very different. So not only are you, making them appropriate for all your age-graded ministries, but at the same point, what we're talking about here in applying your own methodologies is what you're learning from this campaign, especially if you go through the campaign course, grasp the principles and help those be transferable into your own methodologies. So think through that when we're talking about the components. We're going to talk in just a couple points here about components you need. The principle is, attack the different ways of learning. The methodologies may be very different inside your culture. So adapt it. It's kind of like we say about fish. Eat the meat, throw away the bones. And the same thing is true right here. Very
good. Number 4 is language matters. And it matters across the board with the campaign, with whether it's the name of the campaign, but specifically with what you call your small group leaders. For example, and Steve can talk more about this, but you might think small group leaders is not a big deal in the church world and, the tight ministry circles, but the word leader might freak some people out, right? Some people don't think they're leaders, or some people think that, man, I've got to have a Bible degree or have the Bible memorized to lead a small group. So language matters, especially what you're calling your small group leaders, or in this case, I'll call them hosts, because that's what Saddleback really made popular. Was they made the switch from calling their small group leaders to small group hosts, and the acronym is HOST. H is have a heart for people. O is open your home. S is serve a snack, and T is turn on the TV, or that can even evolve to turn on the video or whatever. But the point is, you're saying this is all that you need to lead a group. It's
Derek, a couple fun things just out of this whole point right here, that we used to call our small group leaders, we used to call them district lay pastors. And because we thought everyone would want to be a pastor. Why wouldn't you want to be a pastor? And it really scared them to death on that. And then we went through a phase where we called them shepherd leaders. So we swung the pendulum all the way to the other side. And in Orange County, California, nobody knew what a sheep was, so they didn't know what a shepherd was. So it really didn't translate well. And then, just like Derek said, we talked about small group leaders, but really we found out people didn't want to be leaders. And then we settled into host. And really how we got there was that we realized we had more people with the gift of hospitality than the gift of teaching. And so what we wanted them to be is a host of people, and that's where video curriculum came into play. And that's how we developed video curriculum, is because you're bringing the master teacher in. Now, later on, you want to develop them, have a plan to develop them from video curriculum to inductive study, which, later on in the show, we'll talk about our group method, and also our group Bible method that we have coming out from the small group network. But for right now is, that language mattered. And when you ask people, do you want to be a leader or you want to be a host? Everybody said, I can host a few people, because the leader's coming in and leading the time. So it really was a critical point. Sorry to cut you off. Didn't know if you had anything else on that. Don't want to blow through that and not hit the next thing.
No, I think the only other thing I would add is this absolutely matters. In my own experience leading campaigns, when we made it clear that you are a host, and a host means this, and this is all you need to have, people's eyes lit up. They're like, I can do that. When all you had to do is break down the perceptions. Yeah.
And part of, when we just on that one point, we talked about, stick to the principles, apply the methodology. Here's a great point, because we're saying, hey, you want them to feel like the host. That's the principle. Now, the methodologies of how you break down the acrostic can differ. So for like at Saddleback, we don't say open up your home, because a lot of our groups meet in different places. We just say open up a place. So we keep the same principle. We just changed the methodology on it, because we have a lot of on-campus groups too, that the place happens to be on campus with that. Number 5 is employ various avenues of learning. One of the tough things I've had to learn as a parent that has a kid that learns differently is that people learn in different ways. And I even found that I learned very differently. And so do the people in your church. And there are different avenues that a campaign addresses. You got to tackle all 5 methods of learnings. You see, some people learn through the ear gate, and that's where they'll learn from listening to the messages. And that's very important, but you got to have in the campaign, you got to have that process that's embedded in there. There's also people that learn through the eye gate. They learn through reading. They learn through, I like to read it and comprehend it myself. There are other people that learn through the mouth gate, and they like to discuss it, and they like to talk about it. There's other people that learn through the hands. They're tactile learners. So you got to have a project that's happening in the campaign so they can learn. I learned through the nose. I mean, no pun intended, since my nose just got worked on. But I learned through the nose, which is I like to smell the food. And when I smell the food, I learn how important a small group is because I can get fed. That's totally a lie. No, that's not a lie about me, but it's not one of the learning methods. But then also people like to learn through the mind gate. Some people like to be challenged. And scripture memory is a great way for them to learn. Now, you may have a different methodology that tackles any one of these learning styles, but the principle is you have to employ all the avenues of learning in a campaign so that people can learn the best in the function that they like to. How you do it, you may do some different things.
Number 6, once a year is enough. And I learned this one kind of the hard way. I remember being a small group pastor for the first time, and I'm trying to learn as much as I can. I stumbled upon the Saddleback campaign strategy, and I thought, this is it. We launched the church's first ever campaign, and let me tell you, it was widely successful. Like, there was so much momentum. I remember the pastor's words still stuck with me on our launch Sunday. He said, I have never seen so much momentum in this church as today. And that for me was just this huge win. The problem was I kept trying to do it. Somehow I missed the memo that once was enough. And so
once a year is enough, not just once is enough.
Right. Once a year is enough. So that was, I think we launched our groups in the fall, but then that next winter season, after we took a break, I was trying to do it again. Yeah. And you could immediately see the momentum loss as it was just too familiar. So the point is, like Steve says, what makes the Super Bowl is it's simple. It's once a year. The 51 weeks that lead up to the campaign is what makes it special. Steve, anything else?
Yeah, so true with that. I mean, it's so common. You figure out you've got so much success, but one of the points that Derek's going to be carrying out a little bit later on in the show is, we're going to talk about the taxing that a campaign, when it's done the right way, and you're doing all 5 learning methods, both children's, students, and adults, it's taxing on your staff, and it's just physically, it's a beast. And so you got to let up off the accelerator. You just can't keep the pedal down all the time. Number 7, provide a clear start and end date. Now with this, I would say you've got to provide a clear start and an end date so people know, when am I getting in and when am I getting out? And so that they can see that. But along with a campaign is also with this, provide a clear start and end date, is killing all non-essential activities. Because one of the things that happens is what makes a campaign is that you stop all the activities in the church that are non-essential. Now at Saddleback, we would say support groups and our recovery groups are essential. You can't stop trauma from coming into your church members. And so our support groups, our counseling groups, our CR recovery groups, they continue all the time. But non-essential events, they stop. Now, the problem is people like to keep their stuff rolling all the time. And one of the things that I lose all my friends on staff is when we're doing a campaign and I'm stopping a lot of their activities that are non-essential because they're so close to it, they can't deem whether it's essential or not. And you got to clear the calendar so that the start and end dates, everyone is focusing on the things that matter the most in your campaign, which are generally the weekend message, a small group, and doing the daily reading and the other components that are involved in a campaign. So make sure you provide that clear start and end date and you kill the non-essential activities just for a period, just for 40 days.
And yes, like you said, people may fight you a little bit on killing some of those other ministries I've found. I've seen that firsthand. So that can be a learning curve.
That's how I got the scar on my nose. I mean, someone punched me out because I was killing one of their activities. So let the truth be known.
Number 8, as Steve alluded to, expect high intensity for staff. This includes volunteers, members involved in the campaign. Because it's church-wide, it's go time, it's usually 40 days. And so people will get physically tired. But also that can also mean spiritual attacks. So you just want to be aware that you want to be more than ever during this campaign as a spiritual leader praying and rallying your people to pray. I think you also want to make them aware that, hey, this can be a taxing time. So be filling yourself up, be in the Word, be praying, and encourage your team, I think, like never before during this 40 days. You want to minister to them, pastor them like you never have, so that they stay encouraged. And I think the last thing you want to do is do number 9, which is kind of a crescendo to number 8.
Well, part of that with Derek, just to put a little exclamation point on it, is the reason why on the point before we talked about clearing the non-essential activities, is because people don't know what they don't know. And when you're having them do other things, if they try to do an activity, they get physically exhausted. So, Derek, I love the point that you brought up. I don't want people to miss it. It's both physical and spiritual. I think that's what I was hearing clearly from you. So that's a good point. Number 9, remember and celebrate. And this is super important. All throughout the Bible, we're always told to remember. Matter of fact, throughout the Old Testament especially, they did a lot of physical things to remember what God had done for them. Why is that? Because we tend to forget. And the same thing with the campaign, you want to do a rally. In the course, we spend a lot of time, and also in my book, explain about this, but it's important that you celebrate what's happening. The fun things and the spiritual things, and getting people together, sharing their testimonies. We call them a small group host gathering. Your church may call it a rally or whatever you want to call it, but you want to have a party of all parties so that you can remember this campaign and you can put a great closing part to it. And I can remember all the parties that we've done, just the incredible stories that come out of it and life change that happens even at the event itself. So remember and celebrate. So often we just move to the next hill and we don't even get a chance to party and enjoy what we just did. So a lot of good stuff on that.
Yeah, that one's key. Definitely remember and celebrate. Number 10 is plan for after the campaign. So on day 41, what are you going to do? What are you going to have groups do? If you've built this campaign correctly, you're going to have all this momentum. You're going to have an influx of people. And so you don't not want to have a plan after that and just lose these people. Something Steve often says and Rick is that people will come for content, but they'll stay for relationships. Yeah. So you'll have all these people that wouldn't normally maybe be in a small group, but they're going to join one because of the momentum, because of the content. But then they're going to get hooked. They're going to love this fellowship and this community. And so I remember in my own experience with campaigns, we had some groups that were having such an amazing time together. The last thing they wanted to do was stop. So for some of them, we had an additional month plan where they could continue on 4 weeks if they wanted. So stuff like that. What are you going to do after?
Yeah, that applies both to temple courts. What's your sermon series? Does it make sense for after the campaign and things like that? And it also makes sense for your small group content. If they were a new group, what do you want them to do? If they're an existing group before the campaign, what do you want them to do? And it kind of leads to this next point, number 11. It seems very counterintuitive, but that is give people an out after the campaign. So a lot of times in the celebration that we talked about a couple points ago is, a lot of time that's the end for them. Now, naturally, there's a strategy built in to try your best to get them to continue. But if they absolutely don't want to continue, don't worry about that, because if you give them a positive experience and you give them an out, then the strong chance that the next year when you do a churchwide campaign, it is going to increase and they'll jump right back in because they had a positive experience, and maybe that time they'll continue on. So don't worry about giving people an out, because I can guarantee you your groups will start at one point. Like the first time we did a campaign, we had 825 groups. During the campaign, we went up to over 2,400. Then post-campaign, we dropped back down to actually 1,456 groups. Now, you can look at that as we lost 700 groups or we gained 700 groups. I'd like to think of it as a little bit more the glass is half full. And, you kind of keep going with that. So, give them an out. You'll always be able to come back the next year and hook them back in.
So good. And number 12 is budget to remove financial obstacles. So you got to be thinking, man, what financial resources can we divert to this campaign? Because it's going to pay off so much for your church. And as a small group point person, and Steve, again, you can share more on this, you might really need to cast some vision to your senior leader, because they might be thinking, oh man, this is just going to be another hit to our budget, another thing. You've got to be able to cast a vision to them that, no, Pastor, this is going to grow the entire church, not just physically, but spiritually. And it's really going to strengthen every ministry department. So you want to be thinking about, man, where else can we cut to divert to the budget?
Yeah, just again, to emphasize that at Saddleback, we budget around $600,000 for our church-wide campaign. Some of that's due to size, but also a lot of it is just due because we've seen the fruit from it. We're investing in the future of our church, and it always pays off. Now, Derek and I talked to you about at the top of the show that we have a new course coming out on how to do a church-wide campaign. There are so many details. There are so many booklets. There are so many forms, and there's so many other documents that you need to do this right. And when you see the course, you'll understand, oh man, this is why it can be so taxing. But let me walk you through the course real quick. In the show notes, again, just to remind you, there's a link so you can watch the introduction to be able to understand, what this is about and why it's so important for a church-wide campaign. But let me go through the 6 sessions so you'll know it. Number 1 is, what the sessions are answering. Who is your team and what did they do for a successful campaign? We have 6 downloadable documents that explain that team member's role in what they do in a campaign. So everything from the pastor to the campaign director to the communications director to the small group director and a couple others that are in there. But there are documents, there's a little booklets that you get to download so that you can have with clarity and the ability to, kind of tailor it to your church on what they need to do. Session 2 talks about how do we work as a team? So what is it that you have to do in order to involve children, students, and adults? And how do you get all of those teams to work in harmony together so that, good things can happen? The third thing is where and what is the content of a church-wide campaign? And one of the things that you can do there, we talk about 2 tracks in this session. Are you going to do plug and play where you buy somebody else's campaign, or are you going to design your own? And obviously plug and play is a little bit easier, but the beautiful thing about designing your own is it's your content, and then things become much cheaper for you because you own all the IP and all the content. But a lot of great questions are talked about in session 3 on that. Number 4 is where are all the leaders? And how do you design and develop and get leaders for these campaigns, both in the students, the children's, and the adult world? Session 5 talks about the devil is in the details. And oh my goodness, this session kills me. So I'm glad some other people did it. But the point is that there are a lot of details. But one of the great things is there's a lot of people in your church who love details. And so that's one. And then the session 6 is day 41. And in this particular one, we have a document you can download, and it's the day 41 booklet. And it kind of helps you plan out your next year and a number of things in your church. But there's also some other documents I didn't tell you about how to have a successful church-wide campaign. So there's more documents there that you can read about. And the beautiful thing about this course is that we have a couple people who are helping us out with this. Bob Pittenger and one of his associates, Bree, helped us there from Tulsa, Oklahoma at Broken Arrow Community Church. And Nick Lindsay and Heather Kova helped us with a couple of sessions. Nick is from Hoboken, New Jersey. And so you have some different church takes, not only from Saddleback Church, but also Hoboken Grace in New Jersey and Broken Arrow in Tulsa, Oklahoma. So you'll see, and it just works wherever you're at. So I just want to encourage you to jump into this church-wide campaign and just understanding we want the best for you. What breaks my heart is so many people take shortcuts because you don't know what you don't know. A church-wide campaign is one of the most strategic things you can do in your small group ministry. But if you don't do it right, as many groups as you start, is as many groups as you'll lose. And I don't want that to happen. So we talk a lot about infrastructure and things that you can do to sustain all the momentum that you got.